Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Better Body Radio. This is episode 40. Today we're going to dive into exactly what you probably saw on the topic cover. And I tried to make it as, oh, that's controversial, or that's different. Let's see if that's what people took it as. But essentially, we're going to talk about today why it's okay and when it's okay not to diet, or at least when not to diet for fat loss. So something I posted about on social media literally today at the time of recording, and something that I felt like deserved a little bit of a short kind of, I suppose, elaboration on a podcast. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take almost like 4 client case studies, so to speak. I'm not going to mention the particular names of the clients, just explain a little bit about their situations and the kind of different scenarios in which you're kind of having to, as a coach, really explaining, gain the trust in that client, say, listen, it's okay to diet for something different or to not diet at all. So let's look at that and let's dive into that. So I'll start with kind of client number one. So the first client, she had been working with a coach for a while. She, I think it was probably around about a year to 2 years, had been following very rigid meal plans, had very little flexibility in daily intake, but I'd also been focusing so heavily on fat loss and body compositional changes for such a long period of time, and very heavily biased towards the fat loss side of things. And after a year of being so dialed into a meal plan, ended up developing a binge eating disorder, which is no laughing matter. And it's certainly one of the first rules of coaching is always do no harm. And I can't say that that was achieved in this particular scenario, even if all intentions are good. And listen, sometimes coaches don't necessarily mean for this to happen to clients, and clients have a certain level of responsibility they have to take for themselves with these situations as well, and kind of looking out for the signs. But as a coach, we also should do our part. So anyway, in that situation, of course, coming off the bat, the first thing when I started working with this individual was, right, well, we shouldn't really be dieting, at least not with this really neurotic focus on every single calorie macro. Now, she wanted to keep some of that in her plan, and that was perfectly fine. But it wasn't something that we wanted to, be like, right, okay, you're going to try all protein, all, fats, carbs, and everything else. We just had to kind of say, well, let's set a calorie goal, let's set a protein goal, let's give some parameters and some framework, because having that small element of rigidity was quite important to her, but having a lot more flexibility in terms of the food choices, but also the split of the carbs and fats was also important as well. And as we kind of got through that, as we gained a lot more trust, she was also working with another nutritionist who specialized in eating disorders specifically. And so I was kind of just working with her more on the compositional side and the stuff to support her training and removing a lot of the food rules. And this other lady was helping her work through some of those, the psychological components of, right, well, let's create this relationship with food. Let's, resolve or work through these particular issues. And after 4 to 5 weeks, she was kind of through the worst of that. And, the lady said, you don't need to come back and see me anymore, which was awesome. And so it allowed, myself and this client to then just get to work. And at the end of 12 weeks, there was fantastic recomposition changes. We started down at around 2,100 calories, whereas previously she was, even less than that. She was eating like 1,800 roughly on average. And we got ourselves from the 2,100 mark right up to around 2,800 by the end of the 12 weeks, just by tapering calories up. And so this was a time where it was like the emphasis was on, like, well, let's remove the food rules. Let's get away from the mentality of fat loss or foods being off limits, and let's get into a habit of let's really support and fuel your body in order to get the muscular changes that you're looking for and to really actually grow and build your physique. And that is what we were able to do. And, we're now working through the second component or second phase of that now. Client number 2, another client I started working with is an online client. Essentially had been taken through a really aggressive dietary approach by a nutritionist. And I would argue almost like rather than tapering it down at a reasonable rate. And I've got nothing wrong with aggressive diets or aggressive dieting. It just has to be done in the right way, and it has to be very acute. But this was done over a number of months, going all the way from, like, I think the kind of early 2000s right down to 1200 in a very short space of time, very low energy availability. And as a result, this particular client lost her cycle. And one of the key goals or main goals of us working together is to spend time building the calories back up, really supporting her training output and demands. And ideally, we want to see that, that menstrual cycle return to a more normal function. Now, of course, she's got, specialists that she can go and see and work with as far as if she has to deal with any of the more complex sides of that. But the way that I can assist her as a coach from my point of view is to read the signs. Now, the problem is she came to me initially and she's like, well, I want to, get really good body composition changes. I really want to be in the best shape of my life by the time I'm 40. And it's like, well, that's fine. We can do that. But the goal right now is we really can't go, we shouldn't go down right now. The goal here is we need to really restore optimal health and function first, really support your energy, the energy rich environment that we need for you to be able to progress in your training, and also just to get your health physiology really back online, really manage stress, allow you to be a high performer at your job, but also be a high performer in the gym as well. And so we're in a stage now, it's very early doors, but we're still building those calories up. And what was really great from the messages we had back and forth from the check-in this week was, I'm really starting to feel like I'm progressing really well and consistently week to week in training, and I'm really enjoying having this food. And that seems to be a comment I'm getting more and more, like with these ladies who maybe have been scared to increase their calories over time. And now that we're kind of doing that gradually in a measured way, it's kind of actually really enjoying having that more food there, because, the restrictions are not there anymore. They can incorporate in flexibility to their food. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, actually, I'm training really freaking hard and I work really hard. So, I really want to kind of support that with what I eat and how I sleep and how I live and all that stuff. So that's another scenario where we wouldn't, start nutrition focused on fat loss, just simply because, I've never seen a single person who, when they're in better health, it hasn't made the fat loss process all that bit easier and more responsive. So anyone who's got, like, if I'm getting any female that comes to me and their menstrual regulation is way, way off, for me, it's not even a discussion to start diving into a fat loss phase. It's much more pertinent to get them into a really healthy and restorative place. Now, there may be a discussion around, and this is maybe a whole separate podcast about the consequences of contest prep, and maybe we actually get a female competitor on to maybe even talk about that, who's been through that process herself. But from the very, kind of limited number of conversations I've had with female competitors around that, it's normal to a degree, but like, say you lose it within the last 1 or even 2 months of your prep. As quickly as you lose it, you should ideally be able to try and gain it back within a similar period of time. But what ends up happening is that many of these contest clients or people, they'll end up doing one competition back to back to back, and they don't allow themselves long enough off seasons to, one, reverse diet back to maintenance, but two, to actually spend time in an energy-rich environment to really grow and build their physique. And so they kind of start off each prep from a kind of slightly weaker position rather than starting each prep from a higher position of strength. So that's a whole other topic potentially for another podcast. If you guys want to hear that, you can just reach out and let us know, because I think that'd be super interesting. I've definitely got a few people in mind. I think it would be a few female competitors that would be great to go on to potentially talk about that. The third client I probably have in mind is someone who'd been following a bit more of a dogmatic nutrition approach for a while. So, very, very much had tried almost many things, but the recent one was that really following keto, going super low carb, but with that was going super low calorie as well. And end up getting to a point, also happened to lose the menstrual cycle. Although recently she, after the 4-week mark, she's actually started getting that back. So we were able to kind of get enough energy in for that function to restore itself again, which is great. And obviously fantastic news. It means the body's going to be in a much more responsive place early on. But the big thing for me was just kind of removing the belief system that you had to go almost like super one side of the spectrum, and that you had to be incredibly exclusive in order to get body compositional changes. And so, this particular client started down as low as like 1,000, 1,200 calories a day. I mean, legitimately for a long period of time. And so the goal for her is like, listen, we can't literally go down from here. We can't go any lower, like, unless we're going to live off of 800 calories. And that's part of the problem of why you are where you are now. So let's take the time now. We're not even going to focus on fat loss, but we're going to focus on nutrition. We're going to focus on getting good habits in place, removing the unnecessary food rules. There's a lot of digestive stuff there, which for anyone who's been in this game for a while knows, when you're on super low calories for long periods of time, not only is your menstrual cycle at risk, but your digestive function is hugely at risk as well. Not only that, but hormonal regulation, especially like regulation of the thyroid, for example. If we're super low calories and also very low carb, the thyroid is not going to have a great time with that if it's done over a long period of time. And so what we want to really do, or what we're spending this phase doing, is really, one, progressing her training, bringing her nutrition up to support that progression of her training, but also making sure that there's enough sufficient carbohydrates there and a sufficient amount of calories to support her thyroid and hormonal function, to support her menstrual cycle, to support her digestive processes. And it's all about getting all of those processes all back online and working symbiotically to really support her. Once that's all humming and singing, and then the body's responding incredibly well to the resistance training, we drive that for a period of time. And then when we feel like that, all of that has been at a good place for a long enough period of time, and she's in a psychological and physiological place to attack a physique transformation, i.e. the fat loss phase component to really get lean, not only will we have more muscle to do that, but we'll have a far more responsive physiology and a far more resilient human being to do that with. And I think that's super, super key. And then the last point I'll make is probably just one of my male clients. I've got a couple of clients now that have crossed the 1 year mark, and for them, they had in the past been through, and I'll just take one as an example. He's done incredibly well. We started off his fat loss journey, and within the first 20 weeks, we got him in the best shape he's ever been in, and that was awesome to see. He definitely, if you asked him, he felt like he'd really let himself go. And that's maybe been a bit harsh, but definitely he was not in the best shape he's ever been in. But he did incredibly well within those 20 weeks. We probably could have pushed it a little bit further, but then Corona came around, and what we ended up doing was that we didn't know enough about Corona at the time to make any calls, certainly not as a coach or a nutritionist. We definitely didn't want to make any calls around something that's well within our scope of practice. So I kind of said, well, I'll tell you what, you've been dieting for a while now. Immunity is a little bit more impaired when you're in this physiological state. So let's just reverse diet now. We'll get you back up to maintenance. And we kind of got up there, and we got leaner, and lost a little bit more weight, and we got to the end of reverse diet in tip-top shape. And we just decided, listen, we don't have to just, diet for fat loss here. If you want to, we can really put the investment phases in now, just while things are a bit more uncertain. And so, we really kind of got there in about week 28 or 30. We're now into week 54, I believe now. So it's been a good 5-6 month push of just driving nutrition up. And, he's about 3-4 kilos away from his initial starting weight. But of course, his body composition has completely changed from when he was last near that weight. And so I think, if we had the mindset of, oh no, we have to be, and I see this a lot with guys. I spoke heavily about females in the first 3 examples, but if we speak about the guys for a second, guys have a really tough time, many of them, once they've been really lean, with letting that go. They really struggle with the idea of putting some body fat back on in order to benefit the environment of putting on more muscle tissue. And so it's super important, and this is the great thing a lot of my male clients have been able to embrace so well, is they've embraced the importance of bringing their calories back up, of it, accepting that they're not going to be as, quote unquote, thick skin shredded as they would be at the end of a fat loss phase, but they're going to be a little bit fuller, they're going to carry a little bit more water, but ultimately they're just going to be way more robust and healthier, and we're going to be able to really push and progress their training. And that's what we did with this particular client as well. And so we'll probably go through another, 6-7 weeks from now. He'll have been through a good 6 to 8 months of really driving his calories up, having much more muscle tissue than when we started, because we created an environment that was conducive to that. Then when we're in a position where it's like, actually, I want to kind of get the body fat off now, and I really want to take it all the way this time, we'll then start as actual, real, full on push for fat loss to get him pretty much like photo shoot lean. And that's super exciting. But I think the key message to really take away from all 4 of those examples is that if you're looking, when it comes to working with coaches, just going in and you put all your value into just the fat loss component of the coaching plan, you are missing such the bigger picture of the overall process. Any form of fat loss phase or body transformation phase is merely just a checkpoint in the overall coaching journey. There is so much more to glean and so much more to benefit and learn and obtain from a coaching process than simply just losing all that body fat. There's learning how to build muscle, there's learning how to maintain, there's learning how to, apply nutrition to performance goals. There's so much we can get out of training and nutrition beyond just the kind of simple calorie deficit and lose body fat rhetoric that we seem to be bombarded with on a day-to-day basis on social media. So hopefully those case studies and those examples inspired you to kind of look a bit beyond just simply the fat loss part of coaching, and this is where a lot of clients place their value on, is if I'm not working with a coach to lose body fat, or I'm not in a fat loss phase, then I don't need them. Let's get away from that. Let's really start to lean on, and that's assuming that your coach obviously knows what they're doing. One thing I can guarantee with ourselves at the Better Body Collective is we've all been through this process. Myself, Mal, Max, and Charlie, we've all been through this process. We understand what it is to go through all the different phases. We've also, not been tip-top shape all the time as well. We've had periods where we've allowed work to be prioritized, or we've let the training slip a little bit, and we've all had to then work our way back to get in better shape again. So we completely get it, and we understand the importance of going through those phases ourselves. We literally walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So if that is something that you guys are interested in doing, then what I would suggest you do, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can simply just go from here, click the link down below in the comments. But if you're listening to this on your preferred podcast platform, you can head over to @BetterBodyCollective on Instagram, click the link in our bio, tap the link in our bio if you're listening on phone, and then tap the Work With Us button, and you'll be able to fill out a very short application form. Once you've filled out that short application form, myself or Mal will reach out to you to get the ball rolling and talk you through what the coaching process involves, but also what the expectations might be for you and your particular set of circumstances and the goals that you're setting out to achieve. That's it for this week, guys. The best way you can support us, of course, is to go on to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. If you're listening on any of your other preferred podcast platforms, you're listening on mobile, take a screenshot, pop it on stories, tag us in saying that you listened and that you found the episode useful. That'd be the best way that you could possibly support us and help us get this information in front of more good people like yourself. That's it for another episode, guys. We'll look forward to our next guest episode, and you guys are due for a cracking guest. So stay tuned.